Today is Monday, October 19th, and today we're going to be studying Unit 3, Lesson 7, and we're continuing on with our topic of using place value to add or subtract. Today's specific lesson is about regrouping for addition. Our learning target for today I will add two 3-digit whole numbers and regroup in any place value. Show even changes of 10. Our essential questions for this unit are remaining the same. We're continuing to build upon them. How do we make sense of larger numbers? How does understanding the value of digits help answer real-life math problems? So for this one, I want you to take out your math notebook. Take out your math notebook because you're going to be solving this particular problem in your notebook. And I'll read it. You can follow along. Manny and Shelby collect baseball cards. Manny has 279 cards. Shelby has 654 cards. How many cards do they have altogether? Okay, Manny and Shelby collect baseball cards. Manny has 279 cards. Shelby has 654 cards. How many cards do they have altogether? So using any method that you know how to solve it, I want you to write it in your notebook, and we're going to pause for a few minutes, and I want you to attempt to solve it in your notebook using whatever method that you know how to solve it. So you've had an opportunity to use your own strategy to solve the problem in your notebook, and now what I'd like for you to do is to write down what type of method did you use. So write down in your notebook what type of method did you use to solve the problem. Let's not make any mistake about it. There are several different methods that you could use to solve this problem in your notebook, and we're going to take a look at a lot of the different possible methods, okay? And you're going to have an opportunity to practice with all of them. You're going to have an opportunity to decide which method works best for you. Okay, the first method here that I'm going to show you is called the standard algorithm way. It's the standard algorithm way. Some of you may already be familiar with this method, but I think the majority of you probably are not yet, okay? And this one is not going to be in your book right now. So I want you to go in and take notes on this one and write it down. So write down the word standard algorithm, and we're going to go over the steps. Now, these problems using these different methods are going to be using the same numbers. And I'll go back one slide. They're using the same numbers inside of our word problem here. Manny has 279 cards. Shelby has 654 cards. So Manny, 279. Shelby, 654. How many cards do they have altogether? So the key word here is going to be altogether. That means that you need to add them up. So you're going to be adding those two up. Okay. So back to our standard algorithm, we're going to pause for a minute and allow you an opportunity to write that word down. And I want you to write down the steps also. Write down the steps. Okay, so the standard algorithm way is one that you're going to be learning this year, and you're going to be expected to, to be able to get this step also. Okay. So step one here, so 279 plus 654, we see in step one. So our first step is to make sure that everything is lined up properly. You've got the ones in the ones place directly underneath. You've got the tens, any number in the tens place lined up directly underneath each other, and also the hundreds places lined up properly. Because if they're not lined up properly, that's going to throw your number off and it's going to be incorrect. Okay. First step is you adding up the smallest place value. The smallest place value numbers first, and that's going to be in the ones place. So you always start in the ones place. You see step one, 9 plus 4 is being added up. 9 plus 4 is 13. You see we put the 3 right here because 13 includes 10 plus 3. The 10 is equivalent to 1 in the tens place. Okay, that's equivalent to 1 in the tens place. So the 110 we move over here. The 3 ones we leave right here. Okay, that's step number 1. And you may hear the term carry the 1 over. It's the same thing as moving the regrouping, and you're regrouping from the ones place to the tens place, just one set of 10. Okay, step 2, we're moving on to the tens place. And now you have the 7, and you have to add up the 1 plus the 5. So the 7, this is equivalent to saying 7 tens plus 1 10 plus another 5 tens. Okay, so you have 7, 8 plus 5 is 13. So that's a total of 13. So that means you have 3 tens and 100. 100s. You have to move that over to hundreds place. That moves us on to step number 3. And now you're adding up all the numbers in the hundreds place. You have the 1 plus 2 is 3 plus 6 is 9. So now you have 9 hundreds, 3 tens, and 3 ones for this method. So the second one here is a method that's very similar to the standard algorithm that we just looked at. But this one is basically where the new groups are listed below. Instead of with the standard algorithm, you put your new groups at the top. This one, the new groups are at the bottom. So if some of you may have done this one, but it's the same process, but instead of regrouping at the top, you regroup at the bottom. Okay, and of course you get the same answer here. So we're going to move on to our next method, and this is with place value drawings. So this method is where you are able to use place value drawings. Okay, so with our place value drawings, you are going to represent the 279 is being represented, and also the 654 is being represented. So first, let's look at 279 is being represented. You have 2 flats up here, so you have 2 hundreds, which represents the 200s and 279. And over here, you have 7 rods, which are 7 tens. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This one represents the 7 tens. And now we need 9 ones, or 9 units. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So this top part represents 279. Okay, so now if we move to the bottom, we're going to represent 654. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 6 hundreds. Okay, and anywhere you see the arrows, that's where we're going to have to regroup. But right here, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hundreds is represented, and 5 tens. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tens is represented. Now we need 4 ones. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Now, then we have to regroup, because as you know, with the base 10 system, 10 ones are equivalent to 1 10. 10 tens are equivalent to 100s, and you have to regroup when you get to that point. So we're going to add them up. First, we're going to add up the ones. When you add up 9 ones plus 4 ones, that, as we mentioned before, that it equals 13. So that's the equivalent to having 1 more 10. So you have to have 1 more 10, and that leaves us with 3 ones. So 1 more 10 is over here. That leaves us with 3 ones. Okay. So now we have to regroup after we add up our 10s. So our 7 10s plus our 5 10s right here, when we add those up, we're going to get 12. We're going to get 12. And what that means is we have to regroup by taking one group of 10 and we move it down to create 100. So we have 100. And then our other 2 that are left over are here. Okay, and that's going to be in addition to our 10 that we regroup from with the ones. So next up, for our hundreds, do we have to regroup on our hundreds? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 hundreds. We do not have to regroup on that one. So 9 hundreds, 3 tens, 3 ones. It's going to be our answer, and this is a representation in place value drawing. So go on and make a copy of this into your notebook. Copy this into your notebook. We're going to pause for a minute. So our next method is going to be our subtotals method. Some of you may have used the subtotals method. Okay, so this is where you add up each individual place value. You add up each individual place value. So we're adding our same numbers, 279 plus 654 right here. So when we add up the hundreds place, we get 800s. When we add up the tens place, there are 12 tens, which is 120, okay? And then when we add up the ones, 9 and 4, that's 13 ones. And then you add up the different other categories here, subtotals. You get 800. You got the zeros here. 0 plus 3 is 3. You go to the tens place, and you get 2 plus 1 is 3. And in the hundreds place, 8 plus 1 is 900. Okay, so the way that you got 800 is you added up the hundreds place, the numbers in the hundreds place, that's the 6 and the 2. The way that you got the 120 is that you added up the 7 and the 5. Now this actually represents 7 in this place represents 70. Okay, this represents 70. 5 right here represents 50. So you've got 70 plus 50 is 120. Just like up here in the hundreds place, the 2 actually represents the value of that 2 right here is 200. So the value is 200 and the value of this is 600. So 200 plus 600 is 800. And the value of the 9 in this place is just 9, and the value here is 4. So 9 and 4, 13. So go ahead and write this one down in your notebook and make sure to label it, subtotals method. When you write it down, make sure you label it. I want you to have all these different methods available to you. And when we practice, you get to choose which one. You get to go back to your notes and check and just refer to them. And our next method is the expanded method. Some of you may have used this. This is where you break apart the numbers. You decompose the numbers and you break them apart based off of their place value. 279, we're still adding that to 654. So when we decompose 279, there are 200, so the value here represents 200s. The value for the 7 represents 70, and the value for the 9 represents just 9. For 654, the value of the 6 right here represents 600 because it's in the hundreds place. The value of the 5 right here represents 50 because it's in the tens place. The value of the 4 represents just 4. So now you're going to add up each place value. 200 plus 600, 800, 70 plus 50, 120, 9 plus 4, 13. Okay. And now you're going to do a little further addition. So you take the bigger number, 800, and now you can add up the 120 plus 13, 133. And then lastly, you add up both of these. 800 plus 133, you get 933. So we've already talked about some similarities and some differences between these methods. And what I want you to do is just to write down in your notebook, an answer to each of these particular questions. So write down in your notebook. We're going to pause for a minute. I want you to write down in your notebook and your answer to these questions. We're going to go back just a little bit so we can address some of those questions. Right here, the expanded method, you'll see that it's based upon subtotals of the specific place values, where you added up place value subtotals for each one of the numbers, 279, 654. And the same thing happens with the subtotals method here. You actually have to determine the subtotals. Now this one is a little bit different because you're using drawings, using base 10 drawings for this one. Okay, it's different from the others. And with the new groups method, this was very, very similar to the standard algorithm one, where you added up each place value and you regrouped. You did regrouping for this one. And one of our questions was about regrouping. Which place value did you have to regroup? The ones place, you had to do a regrouping because when you added the totals up, you had 9 plus the 4 is 13. So you had to regroup there and make one set of 10 over here. And also for the tens place, when you added the 7, the 1, and the 5, you got 13. So that means that there was one group of set of 100 that you had to regroup and move to the hundreds place. So those were the two groups that you had to regroup. Okay, so let's go back to our question here. Okay, so we're going to go on to some more practice problems for you. So go ahead and turn to page 144 in your binder. Turn to page 144 in your binder. And we're going to pause and I want you to take a few minutes to answer the questions on page 144. And this slide is just for the top part of that page. And the next slide is actually for the second part. But you're going to answer them inside of your math binder, page 144. Okay, so you've had a chance to work on the problems for page 144. And we're going to take a look at them. Okay, is regrouping necessary? Read each question and determine if new groups are necessary. Explain why or why not. So I went on and did them I solved the problem in the standard algorithm, okay? And you could use any method that we have previously talked about here. And you'll see that for this problem, for the ones place, I added the 3 and the 2, which is 5. I did not have to regroup here. When I go over to the tens place, and I add the 7 and the 9, that is 16. So I had to regroup the tens place here. And then when I bring one group of 100 to the hundreds place and I add the 8 plus the 1 plus the 2, it now becomes, that's 11. So in actuality, I had to regroup the hundreds place. I had to regroup the tens and the hundreds place. So those are the two places that I had to regroup. Okay, so that basically answers the top question and the bottom question. So let's take a look at our second problem. A fruit farm in North Carolina sold 1,542 apples and 2,253 oranges last year. How many apples and oranges did the farm sell altogether? So keep it in mind that you got the word altogether. So that indicates to you that you have to add them. So when you see the word altogether, it indicates that you have to add them up, okay? And of course, we got the two key numbers right here. So the question is, number one, how many apples and oranges did the farm sell altogether? And you see I added them over here on the right. I used standard algorithm for those. And started with the ones place. You always start on the ones place. 2 plus 3, 5. 4 plus 5 is 9. 5 plus 2, 7. And in the thousands place, 1 plus the 3 is 3. Just keeping in mind that you have to line the place values up in the correct place. So I have the 1 place lined up, the 2 and the 3. I have the tens place lined up correctly, 4 and the 5. And in the hundreds place, you have the 5 directly above the 2. And in the thousands place, I have the 1 directly above the 2. So make sure that you line them up, because if they're off-centered, you're going to end up getting an incorrect answer for it. So my answer here is 3,795. So that answers a total number of apples and oranges. Did I need to regroup anything? You see, I didn't have to move any group of 10 over at all, because every answer was less than 10. When I added each individual place value up, it was less than 10. That's why I did not have to regroup for that one. Okay, so let's take a look at the third one here. Number 3, Maria went on a road trip across the United States. She drove 886 miles from New York City to Atlanta, Georgia. Then she drove 717 miles to Chicago, Illinois. Finally, she drove 2,108 miles to Seattle, Washington. How many miles did she drive during her road trip? And at the bottom, did you need to regroup any place values? Why or why not? Okay, so I went on and solved the problem over here on the right side using the standard algorithm. And you'll see I've lined them up in the correct place value order. I've got all the ones above each other in the ones place, all the tens in the tens place, all the hundreds in the hundreds place, and the thousands in the thousands place. Okay, so when I add up 6 plus 7 plus 8, I get 21. So that means that the ones you would bring down here, the 2 tens you would have to bring over to the tens place. So I had to regroup. I had to regroup the ones place. And now when I add up the tens place, 2 plus 8 is 10 plus another 1, that's 11. So the 1 out of 11 you have to put here, and the 1 group of 10 out of the 11 I have to regroup it into the hundreds place. So now I had to regroup the tens place. Now let's look at the hundreds place. 1 plus 8 is 9, plus the 7, that is 16, plus the other one here, that's 17. So you have 17. So 7 ones I bring here, and the 1 group of 10 I brought over to the thousands place. So I had to regroup the hundreds place also. So now finally add up the thousands place. It's the 1 group that I had to regroup from the hundreds plus 2 is 3. So I have 3 thousands, 700s, 110, and 1 1. 3,711. And the average that I had to regroup, I had to regroup the ones place, I had to regroup the tens place, and I had to regroup the hundreds place. So those are the 3 groups that I had to regroup: the ones, tens, and hundreds. So hopefully you made any corrections that you needed to make on yours for the previous slides. And so on our next slide here, this is just a picture of your independent work. And you are going to be working on page number 145. You're going to work on page 145 in your binder. You're going to complete all of the different problems on page 145. This is just a picture of just the top of that page, just to show you what it looks like. However, there are more things underneath here that you need to complete, so make sure you do all of page 145 in your math binder. And when you finish working the problems in your binder, make sure to take a picture of it. Take a picture of it, and you have to include that with your assignment. You have to include the picture of your work with your assignment before you submit it or turn it into your teacher. Let's go to our next one. Okay, so this is our last slide. Again, your task independently, make sure to complete page 145, take your picture, you include it with your assignment before you turn it in. Also, a reminder to work on Dreambox and make sure that you have at least 3 lessons completed by this Wednesday. And our goal of at least 5 done by Friday.